Okay, so let's dive into this. It all kicked off with this big official announcement from the deal's mediator, who was Pakistan's prime minister. The statement sounded great, you know? It seemed to promise this huge, all encompassing peace, and they made a specific point of saying it included Lebanon.
But yeah, that promise of peace, it didn't last long. According to the source material, it was shattered almost immediately. We're talking within hours of that announcement. Things on the ground took a devastating turn, with reports saying at least 100 people were killed in airstrikes on Beirut.
So you gotta ask, what on earth happened? How does a deal like this go so wrong, so incredibly fast? The source describes the scene of just absolute chaos unfolding in Lebanon's capital. Just as the world was processing the news of a ceasefire, a massive wave of Israeli airstrikes began. And the report details the fallout, which was immediate and, frankly, severe. You've got Israeli airstrikes hitting over 100 targets in Beirut, leading to hundreds of casualties. Then, in response, Iran apparently shuts down the supercritical Strait of Hormuz. It got so bad that even the mediating prime minister of Pakistan had to come out and acknowledge what he called ceasefire violations. And this is where things get even more confusing. As all this violence was escalating, the key parties involved started to offer completely different versions of what was actually agreed upon in the first place. It's like, were they all reading from the same script? So the central point of disagreement, according to the source, was all about Lebanon. And this led to a flat-out contradiction. You had the mediator, Pakistan's prime minister, quoted saying, "Of course, Lebanon is included." And then you have Donald Trump stating just as bluntly, yeah, they were not included in the deal. The report then highlights Donald Trump's own reasoning for this discrepancy. In this quote, he seems to frame the violence happening in Lebanon as a, quote, separate skirmish, and says the country's exclusion from the deal was because of Hezbollah. Okay, let's get to the real core of the argument from the source material. This is where the whole story pivots, and it's all about a very specific set of demands, allegedly from Iran, which the source claims was the entire basis for the agreement. So the main claim from the source is that this ceasefire wasn't a negotiation between equals at all. Instead, it argues the whole deal was just an acceptance by the United States of a 10-point framework laid out entirely by Iran. The source even goes so far as to characterize it as a surrender. The source points to a clip that it says aired on Fox News, which lays out these 10 alleged points. And wow, they are incredibly comprehensive. They cover everything from sanctions and uranium enrichment all the way to a full withdrawal of U.S. forces from the entire region. The source describes this list as basically a dream scenario for Iran. And here's the kicker. The source connects Trump's own words directly to that 10-point plan. It cites a social media post where he apparently wrote, "We agree to the framework of Iran's 10-point plan," which, that seems to confirm his agreement with the very framework that was just laid out. But wait, because this is where the whole narrative starts to fracture. Just as things got more and more chaotic, a competing story about a completely different plan started to emerge, and it was coming from the very same people. So the source highlights that Trump then began promoting what it calls a U.S.-authored 15-point plan. And crucially, while talking about this new plan, he's quoted as saying there would be no enrichment of uranium. Now that's a direct contradiction of a key point in the 10-point plan he had allegedly just agreed to. So the crucial takeaway here is how the source frames this. It's basically a clash between two mutually exclusive deals. On one side, you have the Iran 10-point plan, which is described as a U.S. surrender. On the other side, the U.S. 15-point plan described as an Iranian surrender. The allegation is that Trump was switching between them as the situation just got worse and worse.
Unsurprisingly, this level of confusion and the immediate collapse of a major international agreement generated a ton of reaction from journalists and commentators. And the source material documents a lot of it.
This assessment from a Wall Street Journal correspondent, which is highlighted in the source, really seems to capture the general feeling at the time. He frames the deal not as some mutual pause, but as a totally one-sided and ineffective agreement, where only one party seemed to actually be holding back. And all of this leaves us with a really critical question, one that underscores this entire event. In the fog of conflict and diplomacy, with all this intense political messaging flying around, when the words from our leaders and the reality on the ground are in direct opposition, how is the truth ever really determined? That really is the big